a screenshot. Now Tracy post.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to the Authoritas Tea Time SEO. I'm SEO Joe Blogs, and I'm also here joined by Carrie Shepherd.
Hi, guys.
And we're also joined by Hannah, Naomi, and Victoria, and I hope you all have your tea ready for today. Victoria had a really great mug that she was educating us on about kings and queens of... So we have a tea time SEO every day at 4 p.m. to encourage those to take a tea break, maybe with a bit of cake that you made of baked over the weekend, to connect with others and learn something new. So today we have Hannah Thorpe, Naomi Sanderson, and Victoria Olsina. So I'm going to pass over to Hannah, who will introduce herself. Then we'll have Naomi, Victoria, and then Hannah will then give her great tips, followed by Naomi and Victoria. Well, over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm Hannah. I am one of the business directors at Found, which is a growth marketing agency. I've been in SEO specifically for about 8 years now, with kind of a leaning more towards technical than anything, like getting kind of underneath indexation problems, crawling issues is kind of my idea of fun at the moment. And I've worked with brands like Deloitte, Sunlife, Creuset, so a whole range and always kind of mixed across UK and international. My role as business director means basically like integrating channels and making sure we've got the most of everything going for our clients. So a little bit broader than SEO now, which is quite fun too.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Naomi. I have over 5 years experience in SEO. I'm currently an SEO manager at LRG. I've been agency side, so full service and SEO specialist, and now I'm in-house. I've got a special interest in tech SEO, video SEO, and information architecture. I do like that. And then anything else that's like a new challenge, I really enjoy that. But yeah, that's me. I'll pass you on to Victoria.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria, and I'm the head of SEO of Dojono, which is a SEO agency that is focused on the FinTech vertical. I have been in digital for more than 10 years now, and I have worked in Argentina, where I'm from, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. And I moved to London because I have always been a big fan of the Spice Girls. Also, well, some of the brands I have worked with are Barclays, ConsenSys, Telecom, New Zealand Tourism, Lotto, and etc. So, yeah, can't wait to present.
Great. Well, thank you. And I just wanted to say hello to everyone that's joined so far. Some of our regulars, Kirsten, Stephanie, Azim, Raphael, Natalia, and Lawrence. And we have 26 live viewers at the moment. So some people are not signed in, but those that are, you can drop your questions in and we will have Q&A at the end. I'll pass over now to Hannah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. So we'll get straight stuck into it. Tip number 1 for me is really integrating your data sources. So I think like one of the greatest sins of SEO is when we're only looking at the SEO data we have. My first tip would be look at Google Search Console for queries that are driving traffic, but also things about like on-the-go optimizations you can do and small tweaks to test to make sure that your work on your metadata is really working to improve your click-through rate. For PPC, I'd say pulling in what messaging is working into your SEO, not just like what keyword you're bidding on, but what terminology works really well in the ad copy. So we always talk about one of our luxury travel company clients. We're talking about like enjoy and experience about the holidays rather than talking about like go on this holiday or travel with us. It was always about those kind of more indulgent words and how well that boosted the click-through rate. So we applied that into our meta descriptions. Think about social, about how people are engaging and what they're engaging with. Are they just liking something, or are they like actually commenting and they're really passionate about what you're talking about, and that can inform a really great kind of blog strategy. And then we also do a lot of scraping of forum sites and mining of conversations coming up in those to act as a kind of social listening for us too. Cool. And then moving swiftly into tip 2. Perfect timing, Joe. Sorry, Joe's like nailing this assistant job. So tip 2 would be audit your content thoroughly. Now, I can't remember who it is, but I know one of the other ladies was going to cover off some really cool tips about content auditing in a bit. So I just wanted to briefly talk about it. So what we do is we look at content as like pruning, consolidating, improving, or creating, which basically means, do we get rid of it? Do we add it to something else because it's cannibalizing? Do we make it better completely, or do we make new content? One of the metrics that Found use, we call it radioactivity, but we basically use some slightly more creative metrics when we do a content audit, which are on the next slide. Click, Joe, click. Thank you. So when you're on the next slide, what you can see here is like some of those radioactivity things. So for example, we'll take the data for a piece of content over the past year, 2 years, and we look at the half-life. So in how many days did it take for the content from peak performance to drop down to half performance? We look at the velocity up to its peak performance. If it's got comebacks, like it starts resurging again because it's seasonal. We look at longevity, so how many times traffic was high, how long the traffic was higher than the rest of the site, and then how unpredictable it is and how much traction it gets. The reason we do that is it allows us to schedule when we refresh content. It allows us to plan for like, this landing page is great now, but we know what its half-life is, so we need to be scheduled in that we're rewriting it and retweaking it within that time frame, and start to kind of give us some metrics we can benchmark overall content performance against as well. Cool. And then my final tip is understanding Google's intent. So on the most basic level, that's with queries searching if they're informational, transactional, or navigational. And we like to base that on what already ranks in terms of the type of site. We try and not fight with Google, so it's easier to try and rank a transactional site on a search where maybe the results are already transactional. And then we look at the type of content too, like how many choices, what options did they have on that site, to make sure that we're kind of matching to that to see what Google likes. If you want to do something a bit more advanced, we also use some of Google's natural language processing tools and APIs to pull through to see kind of themes in how it's written as well. And then looking for SERP features appearing too. And that just really helps us to understand why those things are ranking and then match our content accordingly. And that was a crash course in my top 3. So I'll hand over to Naomi.
Thank you. So yeah, my tip 1 is HTML sitemaps, but I've called it not the old school way. So just try and diminish that idea of just having a list of links on a page that has no order, essentially. I know John Mueller said that HTML sitemaps don't have any influence in ranking anymore, but I still think they're really good for like crawl depth issues and internal linking, particularly for large sites. So, you know, you've got like forums and e-commerce sites as well. So where you know there are important pages that are just not being linked to well enough and they could be buried on the site. So I'm just going to run through these 2 examples now. So for e-commerce, what I've done before is created brand directories. So this is essentially just having a page and it has, you know, brand directory, it lists the brand, the categories, the subcategories, and all of them linked to their dedicated pages. And then you can link to that from the footer, and then that'd be a brand directory, like labeled in the footer. So if a user lands on it, it doesn't look a bit alien. It doesn't look like, oh, I shouldn't have gone here. It actually seems like it has a bit of purpose, and it's quite good if, you know, there are restrictions to the navigation as well, like what you can add, what you can't add. The second thing is like for forums. So this is the same issue. You can't put every single like link in the navigation. So this is a way of kind of looking at, you know, most visited threads. You can create like a most visited threads thing in the footer, add a new threads page, and you can list like potentially some of those pages and threads which aren't performing very well. You know, in terms of like they're very deep on the site. So I've had a site before that had threads that are over 150 levels deep from Creuset, so this kind of helped. And it also had a type of structure, so you can organize it by category and like topic and date, etc. So making sure that those are accessible, like, you know, from the footer, because that's probably the nicest place to put it, makes it a bit a bit more clearer, like to Google, like to crawl it, and so it's not 150 levels deep essentially. But yeah, tip 2, internal linking. So this one I think a lot of people overlook. So it's just being really consistent with our signals. And here I put like be consistent with terms and the URL you want ranking for that term. So I put an example here. So very broad. So imagine if we had an e-commerce site and we had a brand page for Adidas. We'd probably want all mentions like throughout our site in the body text of Adidas to go to that brand page, because that just keeps it consistent. But just make sure that, you know, if there was mentions of like Adidas shoes, that goes to Adidas, an Adidas shoes page, like a category page you have. You don't try and link it all to just Adidas. That's terrible. So it's just creating like relevancy, and it's just making it clear that we want the Adidas brand page to rank for Adidas and no other parameterized pages, which is common on e-commerce sites. So what I did so this is an example of what we did for a client I did a while back. Was we had an e-commerce site with many different brands, and so what we did is we crawled the site. We use Screaming Frog, but you can probably do it many other ways. Found all mentions of like a brand name, and then we added all the internal links so they were consistent. And then we actually saw really good results from it. So we saw impressions and the position improve like for that brand, you know, the brand queries, and then we saw the traffic increase from that as well. So it's actually quite powerful. So my kind of tip here is like, be consistent on your own site, and it's consistent to crawlers and others. So tip 3. So content pruning. So I think Hannah's already kind of mentioned this one. So this one's more for like large sites like forums. So we all know that bigger sites have indexability and duplicate content issues. Like it's just the way it is. And if there is user generated content thrown in, that makes it 10 times worse. So an answer for this is to regularly like prune the pages which are bringing your site down, rather than just adding more, trying to hide it. To kind of go about this, it's good to create rules. So I've got just an example here. So to find out which pages to prune, this is an example like if we had 0 visits in 6 months, no backlinks, the rankings are terrible, or it's ranking for things that don't even make sense or we don't really want it to. If it's older than a year, or there's been no like interaction with it for a year, if it's a thread, look at 410ing them. So if the site's already large, you don't want to add a redirect to the mix, especially if there's no value. So what are you redirecting? So if you 410, it just means, you know, Google stop there. Let's not bother. Don't bother with that anymore. And if you do this regularly, so you schedule this into like every so often, like whatever time scale you feel comfortable with, as well as kind of helping prevent the duplicate content, it will kind of help manage the size of the site rather than let it get bigger and bigger. And then more things are getting lost and more things are not getting indexed where we want to. And so by doing this, it actually allows room for the stuff we want to do well. And also the coverage report and search console should start looking a lot prettier rather than all the horrible red. We don't like that. Yeah, they're my top 3.
Thank you. So I'll move to my slides now. For everybody that is watching, I want to make sure that you know that I'm wearing pants today. And my only tip for this session is optimizing for feature snippets. And this is one tactic that I have been focusing for more than a year now. And it's the best thing you can do if you are within position 1 to 10. But I would say I would recommend to do it for all your pages. These sorts of optimization tips are present in every copy brief. So in order to improve the chances that you have that Google picks your page for feature snippets, I think it's very important to use anchor link or jump links at the beginning of the page to reinforce where the snippet should be extracted from. And also to have every single heading that is at H2, H3, or H4 as a question from people also ask. And when I say question, I know that in the English language, you're not a fan of punctuation marks. but you use the interrogation sign for better results. In case there are no questions for people also ask, we can go to the basic questions that generally users want to know about you and about your target pages. Like, what is the target keyword? What are the benefits? That's for me the best. That is the best possible answer. Question that you can optimize for. What is it in for me if I buy your products or if I get something from you? How can I apply or get this target keyword? And why us are better than our competitors. And also, in order to tag these snippets, just after the question that we extracted from people also ask, we have to reply with a short and crisp paragraph within the recommended length, which is 40 to 50 keywords, length and table, list and tables, to be able to rank for any of the 3 types of feature snippets that they are available. Also, and a lot of people fail this one a lot. If you don't optimize your image according to your main keywords or the feature snippets you're trying to rank for, Google will take somebody else's image and will put it on your feature snippet in case it's a carousel. So that's a very important one. Optimize your images, which is, again, very underrated in SEO. Besides that, longer contour is preferred over shorter content. And it's ideal to combine this with schema for FAQs and how-tos in order to improve the real estate of your brand in the search engine result page. Then I have an example, very simple example for Dojono. To answer with a short paragraph and a list. This is some content that we have repurposed, and as you can see, it's very simple. No dev work is required, just the way you structure content.
Great, thanks very much. So many great tips we have today. So I also want to say hello to a few others who have joined us. Sarah, hi Sarah, Andy, Annette, Irige, Flo, and Nicholas. So great. I think we've got some questions from the audience. So I'll pass over to Carrie to ask those.
Great, thank you. So I have Hannah's question for Hannah. Sorry. Do you make sure each piece of big content has an expected KPI?
Yeah, basically. Pretty much every content we do, we like to set like macro and then like micro KPIs. So generally when we're adding content, what we're looking to do is kind of become a thought leader. Like, we don't often do content for pure performance. It's normally for a bit higher up the funnel. So when we're setting KPIs for that, we normally have one related to something like relevancy, because we're big believers in entity recognition and only having like relevant links in and having Google recognize you as kind of that authority on that source. So we will focus on that. But then we'll also look at setting in like using that radioactivity criteria, like setting in KPIs of performing above previous content, based on auditing everything that was already on the site as well.
That's great, thank you. We have a question from Andy. Do you try and add CTA or call to action at the end of your questions in the schema answer?
Did you want me to grab that one? Anyone else?
Yeah, just whoever wants to jump on that one.
Personally, I do. But that's because I really think that SEO should be there for performance, like as much as possible. I'm a big fan on the kind of like lists, doing like slightly more. So doing like a top, like a 1 to 9, and then having it so that only like 6 or whatever will display in the Google search results to encourage people to click through. And then assuming once they click through, then pulling them from that article through into like your actual transactional commercial pages. But also really like maximizing in terms of like retargeting people that are coming through content.
That's very helpful, thank you. We have another question from Azim. So what tactic/tip is one of the biggest SEO quick wins that people often look over in favor of a big win?
I think, like, for me, I find internal linking normally is, like, I think a lot of people overlook that. So in terms of one that's overlooked the most, I think internal linking normally is, especially from like the body text. So in the kind of tip 2 I did about internal linking, it was insane how much results we got from that, because the site was so big, and then actually putting all the signals together, it made a big difference. But yeah, in terms of overlooked, I think that's a big win there. And I think there's ways to automate it as well, so might as well.
Also, I think that image optimization is one that it's not a cool tactic, but considering that Google is using images in many feature snippets, I mean, it has always been using images for image search, but now that they are pulling all of this into a feature snippet, I think it's something that is extremely important to do right now.
Thank you. And then we just have another question off the back of that. What results did you get, Naomi?
From the internal linking, we just saw, I can't go into exact metrics, but we did just see a massive improvement. So we saw improvement in impressions, like average position. So I think one of our brand names was like, well, one of the brands we had on the e-commerce site was like, I think it was past like position 20, and we managed to get it on the first page just by doing the internal linking, because it just had so many, it just didn't link to anything. So I think it's just, and then obviously from that, obviously the traffic went up, but it was something that we had to phase in, so it took a while. So I think it was fairly immediate. I think after about a week we started seeing things, and then it got better and better, just because the signals were just so consistent. So yeah, they're the kind of results I saw for those. So
thank you. Do you think all content should have a call to action? For example, blog post content?
I think in terms of call to actions, like there's your call to action of buy now, inquire now, whatever. But there's also like read more and come and see this other piece of content. So I think it's rare that you'd want your user journey to stop with just they view a page and they're done. So I think having that extended, like similar articles, related pages kind of element as your call to action is really key. And I think it really ties into Naomi's point about internal linking being so important, because you can use those elements and those kind of like miniature CTAs as a way of improving your internal linking and how Google's able to crawl through all your content.
Thank you. So we have another question from Arnett. In terms of internal linking, what could be the pitfalls of using topic silos, for example, in e-commerce?
I guess if you like don't kind of explore outside it. So I think some people kind of do topic silos and they keep everything kind of contained within them. I think it's making sure that you are linking outside of it as well, so you're not just keeping it all together. But it's just, making sure things are relevant. Like, don't just kind of force any kind of, don't go all spammy and force all these things to be linked to each other. But yeah, just making sure we are exploring outside of those sections as well where relevant, so not just getting it stuck. Like when a crawler is going through it, it's not just getting stuck in that one place.
Great. We have a question for Hannah. What about buy call to actions on the blog?
I think test it would be my answer. So in terms of like most cases, I think it's worth keeping an option so that someone can go and buy and convert on pretty much every page on the site, whether it's like a link that says view shop that just always appearing and floats down with the user, whether it's a sidebar piece, that kind of thing. I think there are some blogs that will be more commercial where putting a CTA in the text will make sense. But you can kind of test what the performance of the page is like with and without and see what that impact is. You don't want to ruin the user experience if you're trying to be genuinely useful, but also we're all here to make money, so. Yeah.
Okay, and I think one last question for Victoria. How long did it take you to rank the featured snippets?
Actually, I started a new job about a month ago, and we started with optimization of one of our websites, and we were ranking for most keywords in the first page. So a lot of keywords, there was good content, lengthy content with backlinks pointed to it, but none of these keywords none of these pages was ranking for feature snippet on its own, because there was no optimization for content to target these snippets. So we did that, and we started ranking. We are ranking for 12 on one website after so pretty maybe 2 weeks. But again, these were pages that had lengthy content and that were ranking on position 1 of Google. So you can have great content, you can have great links, but if you're not doing the list, the paragraph, and tables, you are not going to get there. So that's why I think it's really important. So nobody cares about position 1 anymore.
That's really useful, thank you. I think that's everything we have time for today. And thank you for everyone for joining.
Yeah, that was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe, Carrie.
That was great. Thanks to everyone that's been coming. We have some regulars that are coming on the show, so that's fantastic. We had 35 live views today, which is one of the most that we've had so far. So it's great to see that. And thanks again to all of you, Hannah, Naomi, and Victoria, for coming on the show today, because I know everyone is very busy. We will be writing some blogs. We will be actually continuing with Tea Time SEO throughout all of May. Carol will be sending some more information about that this week. And tomorrow we will be back here again at 4 p.m. to talk about SEO Friendly Migrations with Joanna Lewis, Kim, and Christina. And actually, I know Joe from actually 10.5 years ago when we worked at our first agency together. So looking forward to that. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Annette.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Azim. See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.